Good evening. Welcome to part two of my series on faith, food, family, and friends. Tonight, I would like to share from one of my favorite verses, and it has it's very personal to me because it's related to an experience that I had a few years back. The verse is Psalms 23, verse 4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. This is from one of the most famous passages that perhaps any Christian would know, Psalms 23. It is thought to have been written by King David, who years prior to becoming a king was a shepherd boy. If you look at the life of King David, he knows what it is like to be a good shepherd. Google might give and does give very beautiful and accurate representations of the relationship between a shepherd and a sheep. But if you go to the Bible itself, in John chapter 10, Jesus talks about himself being a good shepherd and he gives some amazing pictorial representations. He talks about the shepherd knowing his sheep by name. That's in verse 3. In verse 4, it says, the shepherd goes before the sheep, and the sheep follow him, knowing his voice. How beautiful it is. And so when David talks about this good shepherd who meets his every need, he knows what he's talking about. Coming back to the verse that I was looking at, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Now, as I mentioned previously, I was born in a Christian home, and in the way that I was brought up, the home that I was brought up, the church that I was brought up in, we were encouraged to learn verses. We were encouraged to sometimes learn chapters. Some of it was voluntary, some of it was enforced, meaning there probably would have been some sort of competitions where we, learn 100, 150 verses and you write it down and all that. And so I remember when I grew up, some of it, the verses and the references were something that could just easily come out because I kept learning them again and again and perhaps repeated every year. However, the verses or the word itself became life for me in circumstances where I did not actually have the Bible with me. And that's where I would like to bring attention to this experience of mine where this verse came to me. I clearly remember the date. It was 3rd of October 2012. That's when my second child was born. It's the date that he was born. So it was a C-section, and so we had to take him out. And so my husband and older child were waiting outside. And I remember waiting in that room, essentially waiting to be prepped. And this verse comes to me, and I'm reminded to keep speaking this verse over and over again. Neither at that time, nor till to this day, do I know the reason. I do not know if I was facing something life threatening. I don't know if there was something that would, even cause my death that was happening that day. I just know that I was reminded to say this verse again and again and again. In fact, if you've been in a surgery kind of situation, you would know that it sometimes is pretty cold. You sometimes go unconscious and things like that. And really, I don't know how the outcome of that is, but I just know that I had to say this, that even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. For you are with me. Weeks and perhaps a few months later is when I actually went back and started learning that passage again, this familiar passage again. And a few thoughts that the Lord reminded me is what I would like to share tonight. Imagine it this way, and maybe you want to close your eyes if it gives you a good pictorial representation. You have the sheep walking through this valley, this dark valley, surrounded by mountains at the sides, pretty dark. The sheep can't perhaps see much, it can't hear much. If you were to visualize that verse, the sheep is going through this dark valley, not able to see the shepherd, perhaps not even able to hear the shepherd. Maybe it is night and the shepherd's not really speaking. But it says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. I'm not going to go into a big teaching over here. The rod and the staff, they are tools, let's say, used by the shepherd for different things. One is a crooked uh, piece, or one side of the stick is kind of crooked and the other is straight. One is for kind of pulling out the sheep when it kind of falls into the pit. The other one is to kind of give a tap and guide it. And so one is for guiding and one is for picking. And it's a matter of, it's a way that the shepherd protects his sheep. This verse encouraged me because it reminds me that sometimes I might not hear the shepherd. Sometimes I might not see the shepherd. Even in those darkest moments, when I am alone, when I don't have anyone else with me, when I sometimes can't even hear the voice of God or see him enough to feel his tangible presence, his rod and his staff, they comfort me. It could be a voice, it could be a thought, it could be a verse that comes, it could be an encouraging word. I don't know what that is. The rod and the staff would be that small, perhaps not even tangible thing that reminds you that he's there. The rod and the staff might just be nudging the sheep as he's going through that dark valley. But even if he can't hear the shepherd, or even if he can't see the shepherd, he still knows the shepherd's there. I just wanted to remind you, my friends, if you have accepted Jesus and he is your personal savior, then you can call him your good shepherd. And if he is your good shepherd, you still might go through those nights, those dark periods where you wonder why you are going through those difficult times, where you wonder, is there a mistake? But I tell you, he is there. He will send those reminders. He will send whatever it is to prove, to show you that he is there with you. God is great. In all his magnificence, though, he does not enforce that he needs to be recognized in one particular way. I teach my children, or my children ask me, how do you know when you hear God's voice? How do you know this is how it feels when you hear God's voice? The experience is different for different people. Very different for different people. I'll take one example from the Bible. Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus, we don't see him making many dramatic statements, and he doesn't speak much, but he's a man of faith, a man of action. However, we see that several times, 2 or 3 times perhaps in the Bible, it is recorded that the Lord spoke to him, the angel spoke to him in dreams while he was asleep, not while he was awake, while he was asleep. But when he woke up, he knew that the dream that he saw was actually the Lord speaking to him. And so the Lord knows how to speak to you in the way that you understand. Coming back to this, even though you walk alone through that valley of the shadow of death, you will know. You will know. Sometimes you can't hear him, sometimes you can't see him, but you will know by his nudge, by his rod or his staff that guides you, that protects you, that he is with you. I'd like to end by saying Psalms 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the midst of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. May the Lord bless you all, my friends. Until next time, see you. God bless.